We welcome you, Eagles everywhere, to the NovaCare Complex and our continuing coverage of the 2022 Philadelphia Eagles, presented by DraftKings. I'm Eagles insider Dave Spadaro, along with Fran Duffy, and you are looking at the NFC Offensive Player of the Month, Jalen Hurts. What a first 3 games of this 2022 season. Look at those numbers. First player in NFL history with 900 passing yards and 150 rushing yards in the opening 3 games of the season. Fran Duffy, that to me, as we look at some of the team rankings, that's not the most impressive number of Jalen Hurts' beginning of the season. Can you guess what it is?
The most impressive number for Jalen Hurts entering the season?
No, these 3 games of the season here.
Yeah. Is it going to be related to turnovers?
It is not going to be related to turnovers. That's very high. How about yards per pass attempt?
Yeah, and that's a stat that a lot of people put a lot of value in.
9.4, I believe, yards per pass, almost 10 yards per pass attempt. That is remarkable for a player that a lot of people out there outside these walls wondered, could he throw the football down the field accurately? Congratulations to Jalen on his award. And the Eagles just keep rolling with these awards. And obviously, it's all about the wins and the losses. While Jalen is the Offensive Player of the Month, Brandon Graham, the NFC Defensive Player of the Week for his performance against the Washington Commanders. Fran, how great is it to see, look at those numbers, Brandon Graham back to where he was prior to that Achilles tendon injury.
Yeah, it was just awesome to see number 55 flying around out there. And you saw all of those sacks, Dave. I mean, the Eagles had 9 sacks on Sunday against Carson Wentz. They happened for a number of reasons, but you got to throw in some of these one-on-one wins, and that's exactly what Brandon Graham was able to win or bring to the table. He was matched up most often in this game against Washington's right tackle, Sam Cosmi, and let's just say that number 55 got the better end of that battle.
And what we've seen from Brandon, we've talked about this, Fran, since the summer, since we're doing live streams of the practices out here at NovaCare and training camp. Brandon Graham, burst, energy, power, all of that, right? Like you're moving your hand, the wiggle, the ability to go laterally. I mean, what are you seeing from BG as you study him intently?
Yeah, I think you're seeing a guy that is still playing at a high level and is still bringing it in terms of being able to attack offensive linemen. You know, most of his wins on Sunday, like I mentioned, came against the right tackle, but we know the work that he can do against guards as well, and that versatility so important for this Eagles defensive front. I almost kind of wonder, like, what do you think Brandon Graham and Nick Sirianni are talking about right now?
They're talking about something that is connecting, no question about it. As you notice, Brandon is doing most of the talking. And that's something to be said when you're around Nick Sirianni, who is also not afraid to speak.
Loquacious.
He's very loquacious. And but yeah, I mean, this is just, again, a coach who has an outstanding relationship with his players as the Eagles get ready for a very big game on Sunday. The Jacksonville Jaguars come to town, a 2-1 team, first place in the AFC South. They've won back-to-back games for the first time in 18 weeks. 18 months, excuse me.
Yeah, right. Yep.
More than 1,000 days, 1,000 and something like 1,064 days for the first time in that period. They win back-to-back games. A couple of weeks ago, they beat the Indianapolis Colts. And then on Sunday, Fran, and that they're just, I mean, look at that. That's just fun. I don't think they're talking about dancing, but they might as well be. And then on Sunday, the Jacksonville Jaguars go out to L.A. and beat the Chargers. Fran, a good football team coming in here on Sunday. And, of course, the storyline is Doug Peterson. More importantly, though, the Eagles need to find a way to win.
Yeah, to me, like, one of the most fascinating aspects of this game, Dave, it was a stat that NFL media provided to us. And this game here between the Eagles and the Jaguars, the first time in the Super Bowl era that you've got 2 teams going head-to-head with 2 quarterbacks that are both under 25 years old and both have a quarterback rating of over 100 entering the game. How cool is that?
Yeah, that is very cool.
Just this matchup here, and it's not just on offense because both defenses are playing lights out as well. The Jaguars have created more turnovers than anybody in the NFL. They're creating pressure at a very high rate. This is a really aggressive defensive front. In the coverage in the back end, they're very aggressive. They play a lot of man. They'll play a lot of zone on early downs. They are going to bring the heat to Jalen Hurts in this game. And so when I look at this matchup, there is so much to be able to kind of chew on and discuss with these 2 teams going head-to-head.
Our friend, as you have studied, we've all watched Jalen Hurts intently, and the big question coming into his 3rd season, how does he take the next step In what way does he take the next step in his evolution as a quarterback? What is the answer to that question through 3 games?
I think what we've seen is he has been able to show that he can win in multiple ways. It's not just, hey, if things break down, he can beat you with his legs. No, if things break down, he can now beat you with his mind. At pre-snap, we saw him multiple times last Sunday against Washington go up to the line of scrimmage, say, hey, this is what we think the defense is playing. Let me change the play. Whether it's changing to a run, changing to a pass, let me put this offense in position to succeed. And then also being able to attack all areas of the field with his arm. We've seen him attack down the field. We've seen him attack outside the numbers. What he's doing in the middle of the field right now is not something he was doing a year ago at this time. And so continuing to see Jalen Hurts be versatile with how he's able to attack and defeat opposing coverages, opposing pressure schemes, that to me is what sets him apart, the 2022 version from what we saw in 2021.
So he's completed 67% of his passes, which is a big jump from last year, a full 6 points higher completion percentage, which is huge from last year to this year. 9.3 yards per attempt. 4 touchdown passes, 1 interception. Of course, on the ground, incredibly dynamic. 4.5 yards a carry, 3 more touchdowns. He's been durable. Only 1 giveaway, and that was the pass that went off Kenneth Gainwell's hands that Nick Sirianni took blame for. A pass that shouldn't have been thrown. Has seen all kinds of different defenses, Fran, as you've said. And you believe that Jacksonville will try to come after him a bit?
I think so. I think that they're going to, and I should put it this way. I don't know what the blitz numbers will look like at the end of the day, but they are going to give the Eagles offense a lot to think about, especially when you get to third down and you see all the different bodies that they bring out onto the field. They love to get into these speed packages, Dave, where, it's third down. Let's bring the number 1 pick, Trayvon Walker. He could play inside and outside. They move Josh Allen around. They bring guys in off the bench like Arden Key and DeJuan Smoot and Adam Gotsis, and they have Roy Robertson Harris, the starting defensive tackle, who's a hybrid body. And all these guys, they're 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", 275 to 300 pounds, and they're all athletic. They're all ferocious. They all play with a high motor. And so when you see 3, 4, 5, 6 of those guys out there at any given time with the speed they have at linebacker with Devin Lloyd and Foye Oluokun, it's a really tough front seven, Dave. It's a really aggressive scheme.
This is our peek behind the curtain. We open it up for you every Thursday here during the 2022 regular season. Our coverage presented by DraftKings. I'm Eagles insider Dave Spadaro, along with Fran Duffy. We're here at the NovaCare Complex. It's a beautiful day. The Eagles are in a great mood. We all are. A 3-0 September. And talking to Nick Sirianni earlier this week, you know what that means? September's over. It's time to move on to October, and let's start all 0-0 and try to win this week. And I guess, Fran, the big question for people on the outside is, how do the Eagles handle this prosperity? How do they handle being 3-0? How do they handle 1 week Zach McPherson is the NFC's Special Teams Player of the Week? The next week, it's Darius Slay as the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. And then it's Brandon Graham, the Conference Defensive Player of the Week. And then it's Jalen Hurts, the Conference Offensive Player of the Month. A lot of good things being said about the Eagles. You got to block out that noise just as you block out the negative.
I think the next big test for this Eagles team, Dave, to your point, is fighting through adversity. Just showing that ability to say, look, early in games, they are crushing opponents, like by a wide margin, outscoring and outgaining on the ground and through the air teams in the first half of games. But what's going to happen when the offense doesn't play as well or the defense doesn't play as well early, and you have to have that big fourth quarter drive or that big fourth quarter stop on defense? That could happen here on Sunday. The Eagles have been blessed with pretty good weather through the first 3 weeks. Looks like we might have a little bit of a wet game here on Sunday. We just saw Michael Clay, the Eagles special teams coordinator, blast some water onto the hands of Aaron Siposs as he's getting ready to hold these kicks here for Jake Elliott. It could be a little bit of a messy game when you get to it from a weather standpoint on Sunday, but fighting through adversity, that's going to be the next big test here for this Eagles team.
Yeah, I think the Eagles also recognize that they have not played that 60-minute game yet. While they've looked really good in the first half, and in particular the second quarter of games offensively, just 14 points in the second half, and they came in the third quarter against Detroit. So in the fourth quarter there, in the last 2 quarters of wins over Minnesota and Washington, the Eagles have not put any points on the board. And so that's a teaching lesson for the coaches. That's hey guys, we need to be consistent and we need to execute for 60 minutes. And to me, talking to several players, including Jason Kelce after the win in Washington. That's exciting. Like, when this team puts it all together, as Kelce said, the Eagles are going to be really, really tough to beat.
That's the thing. Is like it's like a perfect scenario for a coaching staff to say, like, yeah, like, all right, we start the season 3-0. We're one of the last undefeated teams in the NFL. That's great. But we still have so much that we can improve on. And that has really been one of the themes when you get to those post-game speeches from Jalen Hurts, right? He's harping on those same notes and making sure, hey, we have not reached our standard yet of play on both sides of the football for a full 60 minutes. So that's exciting for everybody in this building.
And if you're wondering who you're watching there, you're watching three very important people in the Eagles organization. To the left, Kyle Laguerre is moving out of the way. He's our team photographer. Tony Leonard in the middle there runs the groundskeepers, and then it's Greg Delamitros. I was telling a joke, and you changed the channel. You changed the pic. Greg Delamitros, our head equipment manager. Vice president of equipment. Fran, tell me about the drill here. Obviously, you want to play low and stay low.
Yeah, working through some special teams reps here. It looks like this is going to be the punt block unit coming off the ball here, trying to stay low, like you said, and really all of these guys, both offense and defense, obviously everybody is going to be playing a part on special teams. So you'll see a lot of that, and while those special teamers are going through drills on one field, you'll get your starters that aren't seeing as much time on special teams. So you see your starting defensive backs here, Darius Slay, you see James Bradbury, you see C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You see these guys continue to go through drills on their own. The quarterbacks are off to the side. We always see Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders. The rest of those guys are all doing some individual work on the side early on here in practice.
Hey, we hope you're with us on Sunday. We've got great coverage for you. It begins at 10 a.m. Well, actually on NBC 10, it begins at 10 a.m. The Eagles Game Plan show actually will air on PhiladelphiaEagles.com, our official team app, and our social media channels beginning on Friday. But the Game Plan show airs at 10 o'clock on NBC 10. Then we hope that you can switch on over to PhiladelphiaEagles.com as well as our team app and our social media channels beginning at 12:10. It's the kickoff show presented by Little Caesars. Ella and Fran in the studio. I'm at the stadium. And Fran, we're going to get ready for a game that should be, again, an interesting one on many levels. Obviously, Doug Peterson coming to town, a Jacksonville Jaguar team that is playing outstanding football. As you say, weather could be an issue. We are seeing that Philadelphia Eagles in a town that is absolutely gaga over this football team at 3-0. Can the Eagles get to 4-0? They've got a lot of things they must handle. We talked about the defense a bit, Fran. I'd like to talk a little bit about what the defensive backs are going to see against former number 1 overall draft pick Trevor Lawrence. I think the addition of James Bradbury has made such a huge addition, such a huge difference in the defense. The way he and Slay and Avonte Maddox are playing lights out in coverage.
What stands out to me, Dave, is watching the back seven, and not even just the corners and the safeties, but you factor in the linebackers, you factor in nickel corner Avonte Maddox. The communication, the amount that we're seeing these guys pass off receivers in coverage, it led to a number of sacks on Sunday against Washington. I pointed out that play against Minnesota as well. Those guys just continuing to pass things off and seamlessly play in transition in this defensive scheme, year 2 under Jonathan Gannon. And it's just so impressive. I can't remember the time when the Eagles had this quality of play and coverage from the linebacker, safety, nickel group, right? That group is all working very, very closely together in the middle of the field between the hashes, and it's just really, really good play from that side of the ball right now. But to your point, they're going to have a big test here against Jacksonville. The ball comes out really, really fast out of Trevor Lawrence's hands. He's not getting sacked, Dave. The ball comes out really quickly. He's in the top 5 right now in average time to throw in the NFL, so the ball's going to come out fast. Now it's going to be about making sure that you, number 1, tackle, but then number 2, again, pass things off and make sure that you're not giving up any cheap yards after catch against this scheme.
And the wide receivers feature some familiar names who maybe you don't know in a sense of like stepping up into big-time roles, like Christian Kirk, who signed a big free agent contract with the Jaguars. I think a lot of people around the league snickered at that deal, kind of one of the early deals in an exploding market for wide receivers. Kirk has 3 touchdowns in 3 games and has the speed to take it and just blow at the top off the defense. That's something that Jonathan Gannon, that's like the number 1 thing. Do not give up the big play. Tell me about Christian Kirk and Zay Jones and Marvin Jones Jr.
So Christian Kirk, one of 5 receivers in the NFL to have at least 6 catches in every game so far this season. So yeah, they gave him that big contract, but they're not just saying, okay, well, we'll let him get his money and that's it. They are making him earn every cent of that contract. They are featuring him in this offense, and one of the big themes with him is that he's not just like an outside the numbers weapon. They move him into the slot often. They move him into the backfield often. He's caught touchdowns in the red zone out of the backfield. A lot of the things we talked about a week ago with Curtis Samuel, you're seeing these same things with Christian Kirk. Only 41% of his catches, Dave, have come against corners. So think about that, just how often he's getting matched up against linebackers and safeties underneath. So it's going to be a kind of a team effort trying to keep him contained. They like to feature him in the red zone. They'll feature him in between the 20s. So you have to keep an eye out for Christian Kirk. But then you look around at some of these other pass catchers. You mentioned Marvin Jones. You mentioned Zay Jones, 2 guys that have played in this league for a good while. Zay Jones, big possession threat. He's tied for the team lead in targets right now. He had a big game a couple of weeks ago, featured outside the numbers and in the middle of the field. You look at Evan Ingram, another former first-round pick. Eagles fans should be familiar with. He was with the New York Giants previously. He can run, and it's not just, we're going to get him down the seam. They're throwing these crossing routes to him, so now they're trying to create yards after catch. So Kaiser White, TJ Edwards, you see here on your screen, they're going to see plenty of all of these guys, Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk in particular. So I think when you're looking at these pass catchers, the offense, the scheme, it's going to look very familiar to Eagles fans. A lot of the same pass plays that we saw over the course of Doug Peterson's tenure here in Philadelphia, but the ball is going to come out really, really fast, try and get the ball into the playmaker's hands as quickly as possible.
It seems like Doug is refreshed in Jacksonville, as you would expect. Able to take this young, talented quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, and develop him, mold him into kind of the pure West Coast offense quarterback that he wants, which is interesting with a quarterback who's 6'6", and who doesn't really, who has the athletic ability to extend plays if he wants to. I mean, we poke holes in every player. So if you're poking holes in Trevor Lawrence, what are you finding?
I think at times you're going to see him, he can be a little bit inaccurate at times, more so last year than this year. They've really corrected a lot with him, so he doesn't have as many of the missed layups as he did a year ago. The big thing that stands out, and it's what makes him so difficult to defend and the structure of this offense, Dave. I talked about already how fast the ball comes out, but on plays where he does hold it, he has shown the ability to be really, really effective on the run. He actually has thrown more touchdowns on the move than anybody in the NFL this year. So that's a pain to deal with. You say, all right, most of the time the ball's going to come out fast, but even when he does hold it, he can make you pay. And that's one of the, going back to Jalen Hurts, when you have that kind of versatility as a quarterback to be able to say, all right, I can sit back and carve you up, or I can run around and make a play. That's what makes you really, really difficult to defend. And that's what Trevor Lawrence has done so far through 3 games.
What kind of challenges, you talked about it briefly, will the Jacksonville front pose for Jason Kelce, Isaac Seumalo, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, excellent on the edges, good linebackers as well. Pressure over the nose?
Yeah, I think when you look at just the defensive linemen, Dave, they play like 9 guys. And that's a lot. They played 9 guys up front, and all of them, like I mentioned, they have like very specific roles. Some of them are pure like edge speed guys. Some of them are kind of combo inside outside. Some of them are pure run stuffing nose tackles. But all of them play this role really, really well. We've mentioned, look, Trayvon Walker, number 1 pick. This guy is a freak show. He's got a pick. He's got a sack. He's got a forced fumble. He's making plays against screens. He's chasing the run. He's outstanding at the point of attack in the run game. So he's a load to handle. Josh Allen, another former top 10 pick. He's another player that can really check a lot of boxes off the edge. But then you get into some of these role players, Davon Hamilton at nose tackle. He's got a really quick first step, and he's really, really strong. Folo Fatukasi, they signed in free agency from the New York Jets. He's another guy. He's 6'4", 320 pounds, and he's a refrigerator inside. He's so tough against the run. And then he's, all right, well, now we're going to get into 2nd and long, 3rd and long. Let's get the run players out. Let's get all the pass rushers in, and that's where they get Arden Key and DeJuan Smoot, and you kick in some of these other guys that are playing defensive end. Roy Robertson-Harris, one of the more underrated players in the entire NFL, is an outstanding pass rusher from the interior, 6'5", 300 pounds. So you kind of see the body types here. They're all long and all athletic. They're versatile. It's a really tough group to prepare for, but the Eagles have one of the best offensive lines in football, right? And that's what makes this such a fun matchup.
Jacksonville, best in the league at stopping the run, allowing just 55 yards per game. They've played Washington, losing on opening day against the Commanders. A big win the next week against the Indianapolis Colts, and then really perhaps the signature win of that franchise in the last several years. Sunday in LA against the Chargers. Now, we know the Chargers were beat up just a bit, Fran, but that was a tough game early, and then Jacksonville just played better and better and better and wore down, wore out, and then blew out the Los Angeles Chargers 38-10. So they leave late in the day on Sunday from LA, go back to Jacksonville, and we know what's going on in Florida. I don't know if it's really impacted Jacksonville much at all, but with the hurricane and the torrential flooding and the power out, they fly up to Philadelphia on Saturday. You do wonder the road wear and tear and, the fact that they kind of accomplished a milestone, winning for the first time back-to-back in 18 months. It does lend the question, can they get back up to that elite emotional peak again here in Philadelphia?
Yeah, and that's what you want to keep from happening, right? Is you don't want to give this team any confidence. The Eagles have been so good starting fast in games and getting out on opponents early. As we watch Nick Sirianni really hitting on perfection here, Dave.
Yeah, so guys, if there's even the thought that the Eagles are going to coast or be sloppy or not pay attention to the details, I think Nick Sirianni just answered that question with a bit of a tongue lashing, would you say?
Yeah, I would say. Look, what are the priorities for this team? It's ball security and creating explosive plays, and defensively, it's stopping explosives and getting the ball back, right? And so, offensively, these drills, they do them every single day in some way, shape, or form. They are working on ball security, protecting the football in every way imaginable.
And look, the Eagles have been great with giveaways. That's been one of the reasons that this team is 3-0. Jalen Hurts, as you see him leading the way in every way, effort, intensity, time spent at the NovaCare Complex, performance on the field, really is a joy to watch. And I think, Fran, honestly, whether you're an Eagles fan or just a casual football fan, how do you not root for Jalen Hurts?
It's tough. It's tough not to, right? I think when you look at everything that he has been through, his story arc going from high school to college to the NFL has been awesome. And just continue to watch his development. He's gotten better every single year. I remember watching him as a true freshman at Alabama and just seeing him get better from that point to the next year, to the next year, to the next year, from the Senior Bowl to the Combine to his rookie year, and then obviously year 1 to year 2, and then what we're seeing now with him in year 3. Just really, really special in terms of what he's done so far in his career.
And Dallas Goedert, big catch, big run, big touchdown against Washington. Goedert, clearly an elite tight end. And Fran, I really like this group of tight ends. I wrote something yesterday with Grant Calcaterra. The first game he plays, first catch he makes, Jack Stoll developing. The way the Eagles have been able to transition that tight end position, it's just very impressive.
Yeah.
Goedert is the man, and he's bringing along the likes of Calcaterra, Stoll, and Tungai, who is also a prospect the Eagles really like.
No doubt. And I think when you look at Tyree Jackson as well, who's due to come back at some point here this season from his injury, just a really versatile athletic group. And one of the things I loved there, Dave, we just saw, Dallas Goedert, he gets finished his rep. This is not a ball security drill, but to your point about bringing the young players along, Grant Calcaterra catches a pass, he's going through a route. Who's standing there in the end zone? They're getting ready to punch the ball out. That's Dallas Goedert. No one else is. They're not asked to do that in this drill. But again, just harping on the things that they value, that they place as being important. Ball security is one of them, and that's just like a tiny example into the psyche of this team.
There's my guy right there, Devonta Smith, who is the feature in this most recent episode of the Eagles Insider Podcast. Now, everybody out there, I really hope that you subscribe. If you don't, please do. I sat down yesterday with Devonta, Fran, for an interview. Now, he's not the most talkative guy in the world. 17-minute interview with Devonta Smith. I have never been so challenged in my entire career, and I thank Devonta for the time, and he was great, and he opened up, and he laughed, and we had a good time, and give you a little bit of a peek into the world of Devonta Smith.
Give us one little tease. I can't wait to listen to this on my ride home today because it just got posted, right? So I will give me one little tease.
Well, we talked about everything from his dedication to the game, what he would tell young players if they want to be wide receivers, great wide receivers, his fashion sense. We talked about his toughness and where that came from. It didn't come from the game of football; it came from the game of basketball. We talked about, oh my gosh, his sneaker line is out and live, and Eagles fans can order Devonta Smith line of sneakers and potentially win a meet and greet with him. We talked about the Batman, and I kind of scooped everybody on a little tattoo that he might have on his body. So it was just great. I mean, there's just a lot of things to talk about with Devonta, and I thank everybody for their help getting to know a very quiet young man who is as dedicated to this game as any receiver any player that I've ever been around. He is something, man. He wants to be the greatest that he can be 100% of the time.
I had the Eagles wide receivers coach Aaron Moorhead on the show this week on Eagles game plan and for tape study. So just going through a handful of plays. We did a couple of Devonta's catches from this past week, and on multiple of these reps, I turned to Coach and I was like, Coach, I don't know what's better, like the route or the catch here. At the end of the day, we were like, I mean, him jumping over two defenders and coming down with the football 40 yards downfield, you have to talk about that, but he's just such a well-rounded player, Dave, that he makes it tough to say, like, yeah, it's this part of his game that makes him elite because he just checks so many boxes as we see Aaron Moorhead taking these guys through these drills.
Sideline route, perfectly thrown ball from Jalen Hurts over his outside shoulder. Somehow Devonta contorts his body to make the catch and then to get 1 foot down, 2 feet down, and just to make sure the Eagles rush up to the line of scrimmage and run the play before Washington can throw the red flag and challenge it. But, I mean, he does things that are just really remarkable, and the best is yet to come. He's working on his body all the time. He's getting stronger all the time. You see him talking there with Quez Watkins about the finer points of being a great wide receiver in the NFL. A little release drill there. Yeah. Release and come back to the ball.
That catch that you talked about, the 45-yarder along the right sideline, you know, people see like it's like the Willie Mays catch, right, where you're looking it in through your eyelids, and you can try and do that when you're outside with your friends, with your buddies, and you're playing in the backyard, and you try and look it in, or a tennis ball over the shoulder. Try doing that, like running full speed with a helmet on when there's a DB, like trying to take your head off. Just unbelievable ball tracking ability and the hands, the ball skills, just everything across the board. Whether you want to say like 1 foot down, 2 foot down, I don't care. Just a ridiculous catch.
Is that the best that he's had in one season plus 3 games? Is Denver a bigger one?
The Denver catch stands out. He had a catch last year against the Chargers that stood out. That's got to be top 3. But that's the thing, is like I went back and forth. Is that better than the one he had that got them down to the 1 yard line where he jumped down over 2 defenders? Because I think people think of Devonta Smith, like the route running and the ability to separate, and obviously he never puts the ball on the ground. But going up and over 2 guys, like people weren't necessarily thinking about that when the Eagles drafted him because the big question was his size. So him doing that was remarkable as well.
Was the touchdown catch this week?
It's in there too,
right?
It's just he does it all.
He's an every catch highlight reel, and then even the sideline route that he caught, I guess in the the second quarter, where he the catch and run.
Yeah,
you just get a glimpse of just how fast he is.
Yeah,
people don't think of him as the speed guy. How would you describe him, Fran? If somebody said, "Wait, I've never seen Devonta Smith play. Is he a speed receiver? Is he a big physical receiver? Is he a guy who just takes over a game? I mean, how would you describe him?"
I would say he is a silky smooth player in everything that he does. He is just everything just looks easy with Devonta Smith, and that's the thing, is when you have a guy that is built the way he does, he is able not just to we talk about this with like Jalen Hurts avoiding big hits. He avoids contact so well and so subtly without breaking stride. We talked about how like it's so unique to see a guy that can make get the top speed, but then make a lateral cut at that speed. That is Devonta all day, and that's the thing too, is then you pair that with A.J. Brown, who obviously could check so many of these boxes. Quez Watkins and what he brings to the table. Zach Pascal doing a lot of the little things so well just in Sunday's game. It's a really fun group of pass catchers.
Britton Covey there. Now, the Eagles have not made any sort of roster move, but he has played. He's been brought up from the practice squad 3 times.
Yep.
So no more options that way. The Eagles will have to add him to the active roster this week, or I guess keep him on the practice squad.
Right, and that's the thing, is they'll have a choice to make from that arena. We did see Devonta Smith get used as a punt returner a couple times on Sunday, and we'll see. That's obviously an option that's on the table for them as well.
And there's somebody who's having an absolutely terrific, knock on wood, stay healthy, 3 games of this season. Miles Sanders running decisively, running with great vision and power. And there's a Jamal Singleton saying, hey, the camera's on you, man. Let's go. Let's go. I really like the way Miles has played, Fran. It'll be a tough sledding this week, no doubt, against the Jacksonville D, but Miles has played excellent football.
I am fascinated to see what the Eagles' plan of attack is against this Jaguars defense, because they've been, number one, they are so good on the edge at like being able to set that edge and force running backs to cut back inside. But even if you do get the edge on them, they've got outstanding speed at linebacker with those two guys that they play in the middle of that defense, and Olukun and Devin Lloyd. So the Eagles are trying to find ways. And you know they can do it, because it's one of the best rushing teams in football, if not the number one rushing team in football over the last 2 years. Step.
Miles, get it. Miles, get it. Okay, Fran, let's put together a game plan. Eagles offense, Jags defense. What are you doing?
To me, like, one of the matchups I'm most fascinated by is just these Eagles receivers that we've been talking about. Again, you can see the Eagles preparing for this potential wet weather on Sunday. The Eagles receivers going up against this Jacksonville secondary. We talked so much about that front seven. The secondary a little bit banged up last week. They were missing their starting corner, Shaq Griffin, so that caused them to kind of shuffle some pieces around. When I look at some of the weaknesses in that secondary versus some of the strengths in the Eagles receiving core, the Eagles receivers are so good at playing the ball in the air and finishing. As we've talked about, that's a little bit of a weakness, I think, for Jacksonville's secondary. So that's a matchup that I think can be exploitable from an Eagles offensive standpoint.
All right, now you are putting together something, Jonathan Gannon. You're spending all week looking at Jacksonville destroy the Chargers last week. Big run, James Robinson, excellent running back, a good offensive line, young quarterback that everyone believes in, solid weapons, some real speed with Christian Kirk. Zay Jones, a big production guy. Marvin Jones has had his moments for sure in his career. What are you doing if you're Jonathan Gannon?
I think, number one, you have to rally and tackle in this game because the ball comes out so fast. I would expect the screen game to be a huge weapon for the Jaguars in this game. They did it last week against the Chargers, and we know that, philosophically, they don't do everything exactly the same way, but philosophically, the Brandon Staley scheme and the Jonathan Gannon scheme are very, very similar. So I would expect to see a lot of screens from this Jacksonville Jaguars offense, and so that requires everybody rallying to the football and finishing. And then, look, the Eagles have to, once again, win these one-on-one matchups up front from a defensive line standpoint. You don't want to have to send extra pressure if you don't have to. So looking at Fletcher Cox going up against one of his old buddies here in Brandon Scherff. They've had so many battles over the years.
Who's
here
playing
in the
great
NFC.
football.
Scherff is playing excellent so far this season at right guard. But I think when you look across the scope of that Jaguars offensive line, they've got a rookie center. They've got like a third-year left guard, a young guy in Barch. So I think when you start looking at this Jaguars offense, the Eagles defensive front, they want to be able to win these one-on-ones once again here in this game.
This is our continuing coverage of the 2022 Philadelphia Eagles presented by DraftKings. We're here at the NovaCare Complex. I'm Eagles Insider Dave Spadaro along with Fran Duffy. Eagles Insider podcast drops today. Devonta Smith is my featured interview, one you won't want to miss. I worked really hard to get Devonta to open up, and he did just that. Fran, what do you got going for Eagle Eye in the Sky and Journey to the Draft? By the way, if the draft started tomorrow, the Eagles would draft where in the first round?
I believe it's 7.
I believe it's 6.
6
possibly.
now?
So wait, the Eagles are 3-0.
Yep.
And if the season ended right now, the Eagles would draft number 6 and number 31 or 32 in the first round.
Obviously, look, this is a draft that a lot of people are very, very excited about, and we're talking about all the top prospects twice weekly over on the Journey to the Draft podcast. So just got a nice, easy, quick listen. You have an idea of who you want to watch on Saturdays in college football. But Dave, like you said, the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, that also dropped yesterday, or this morning actually, wherever you get your podcast. So big thing, I talked with John Shipley, who covers the Jaguars, and one thing I do every single week, Dave, is I'll bring on a writer from the opposing team, and let's just talk through, hey, John, put on your Press Taylor hat, put on your Mike Caldwell hat. What gives you so much confidence going into this game with the Eagles, and what gives you concern if you're Doug Peterson going into this matchup? I'm always fascinated to hear what the storylines are in the opposing city. What are they most worried about? And obviously, stopping Jalen Hurts in this past game, a big topic of conversation along with this defensive front, as we see here on our screen, Dave. So that was a big topic of conversation on the podcast.
And you do wonder what Doug Peterson's familiarity with Jalen, his strengths, his weaknesses, the offensive line, the skill position people that the Eagles have, what kind of factor that might be for Sunday. that inside intel that Doug has, the institutional knowledge from being here, I mean, yeah, it means something, but the Eagles also kind of have a feel for what Doug likes to do.
No doubt.
And one thing the defense will have to be aware of, Doug Peterson will go for it on 4th down. So you're really playing defense in a 4-down situation all the time.
Let me ask you a question. Over, under, 1.5 trick plays from the Jacksonville Jaguars offense in this game on Sunday.
I will say under. I think Doug wants to avoid the big loss of a play. I feel like he thinks he can move the football kind of up and down the field in a really measured way rather than trying to surprise a veteran defense with a trick play.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to your point that there's so much knowledge really with both coaching staffs, because it's not just Doug Peterson there, but Jim Bob Cruder is down there in Jacksonville. He was on this staff a year ago. Mike McCoy, very familiar with a lot of people on this staff, and it goes both ways. Like you mentioned, I mean, Jeff Stoutland, obviously very well aware. Aaron Moorhead worked with Doug Peterson here in 2020. So there are coaches on both sides of the field that are very, very familiar with one another. I was fascinated, even just looking at the roster, Dave. Jacksonville doesn't have any former Eagles on that team. Usually you see that when a new coaching staff comes in. All right, we'll bring in some players that have some familiarity, but not the case so far with Jacksonville. And that's actually what makes their start so impressive, Dave, is that despite they had 2 wins last year, it's a lot of the same guys back. They went into free agency, you get the number 1 pick and all that, but not a ton of turnover that you would expect with a new coaching staff.
We're here at the NovaCare Complex. We hope that you have really enjoyed this. It's a beautiful, beautiful Thursday once again here. The Eagles have had excellent practices, and they have played very well through 3 games. Trying to get to win number 4 on Sunday as this 2022 season, the calendar turns to October. We want to thank you for joining us here, our continuing coverage of the Philadelphia Eagles presented by DraftKings. I'm Eagles insider Dave Spadaro, along with Fran Duffy. Make sure you're with us 12:10 on Sunday afternoon. The Eagles kickoff show presented by Little Caesars. We got you covered all the way through, including the Rico postgame report. Make sure you're with us, everybody. Have a great Eagles day. Fly, Eagles, fly. And go Birds!